As calls grow for legislation to address the crisis of gun violence in America, let's take a look at how the American people feel about potential new restrictions on gun ownership. CNN's Harry Anton joins us now from the Magic Wall. Harry, so there seems to be a bit of a divide between the polling and the voting, how people vote on something as basic as background checks. What are you finding?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at polling for support for background checks for all gun buyers, this is a Quinnipiac poll from last year. Look at this. 89% overall said that they were for background checks for all gun buyers. 98% of Democrats, 88% of independents, 84% of Republicans. You basically never see that type of universal support for basically anything, even if the sky is blue. But here's the thing. Polling is one thing. How people actually vote is something entirely different sometimes. And so I want to go to the states of Maine and Nevada. Back in 2016, there were ballot measures for expanding background checks in both of those states. And Maine and Nevada were within a point of the national presidential vote that year, right? They're right in the center of the electorate. And what happened in Maine and Nevada? Look at this. In Maine, the measure to expand background checks got less than 50% of the vote. It actually failed. No one with 52% of the vote. In Nevada, it barely passed with just a little bit more than 50% of the vote. So for me, I look at the polling, it says one thing, but I look at the actual voting, and it shows a very divided public, even on something as simple as background checks, Jake.
Yeah, and we should remember the polling reflects the views of the public, not necessarily just the views of people who vote. So there is, there is a divide there. What happens when you look at gun views overall instead of specific measures?
Yeah, you know, if you look at specific measures, you find this vast amount of array for basically restricting gun rights. But look here, are you satisfied with U.S. gun laws? This is a Gallup poll from last year. Dissatisfied, only 36% of Americans say they were dissatisfied and wanted stricter gun laws. Look at this. The vast majority said they were either satisfied or wanted less strict gun laws. I love this question because it covers not only views, but the power with which people hold them. And here's the thing that I think kind of really gets at it. Which party do you agree with on guns? Look at this. An even split. 38% say they agree more with the Republican Party versus 37% who say they agree more with the Democratic Party.
Republicans in the 1990s were much more willing to support gun restrictions. The 1994 crime bill, in fact, which contained the ban on some semi-automatic assault weapons or semi-automatic weapons. It included the Brady bill, et cetera. That bill was supported by 46 Senate Republicans. What changed? 46 House Republicans. What changed?
The voters changed. That's what changed. So look at this. More important to protect right to own guns than control gun ownership. Democrats, basically the same, right? 21%, 20%, 2019 versus 2000. But look back in 2000, less than a majority of Republicans said it was more important to protect right to own guns than control gun ownership. Now, look at that. 80%, the vast majority say it's more important to protect gun rights than to own guns. I think the thing I'm looking forward most to in the midterm election, pre-Uvalde, gun policy, extremely important to the vote for Congress. More Republicans said it than Democrats. We'll see if that switches now as the events have unfolded.
Interesting. Harry Anton, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Joining us now,
thank you, Jake.
Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse of Colorado. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us. So you just saw Harry Anton's report showing that about as many Americans trust Republicans on gun control as they do Democrats, and that a majority of Americans are satisfied with the nation's current gun laws or think that they are too strict. So you're from Colorado. Your state has seen so many terrible mass shootings, including Columbine in '99. Why do you think that so many Americans don't see this issue the way you do?
Well, good afternoon, Jake. Thank you for having me on. I've certainly seen polling data that suggests quite the contrary, and I think your correspondent was right on the front end when he talked about the individual policies and proposals, for example, universal background checks, red flag laws, many others that you've, of course, covered on your program, that are widely popular amongst the American public, including with gun owners. Now, as you said, there are some studies that suggest on more broad questions posed around gun violence prevention that perhaps the data isn't as strong. Of course, that I think is in some respects a reflection of having unadulterated views prior to the campaigns and influence of the gun lobby and so much more that I think has shaped the debate, the public debate around gun violence prevention in the United States. But as you said, here in Colorado, we are no stranger to gun violence. Of course, the tragedy at Columbine 23 years ago, but also, as you know, Jake, I was on your program a year ago when in Boulder, my community, we lost 10 members of our community who were gunned down, murdered in cold blood at a grocery store in March of 2021. My constituents have made it clear to me and my colleagues that inaction isn't an option. They expect the Congress to take this seriously and to treat it as the crisis that it is. And I am confident, Jake, while there are some who certainly disagree with different policies or proposals that we've made, that the vast majority of Americans do agree that it's important for Congress to pass common sense gun violence prevention measures.
So your committee just voted along party lines to advance legislation billed as an emergency response to recent mass shootings. It's a package that includes restrictions on large capacity magazines, raises the age to purchase certain semi-automatic rifles from 18 to 21. It doesn't seem like that is legislation that has much of a chance of getting the 60 votes necessary in the Senate to defeat a Republican filibuster.
Yeah, I think that your prognosis, Jake, is not wrong. I think, obviously, to the extent that the House were to calibrate any policies that we take up based off of whether or not they would ultimately pass the Senate, the House would never take up any legislation. The Senate is a very lethargic institution, and the filibuster a very high burden that unfortunately has prevented, I think, the United States Congress from taking decisive action on important issues that face the public, including gun violence prevention. All that being said, I think it was important, number one, for the House to show that we are being responsive to the concerns of the public, the policies that you just referenced, which are part of the omnibus bill that we considered last night, again, are popular common sense policies, raising the age from 18 to 21, for example, for a purchase of a semi-automatic rifle, the scourge of ghost guns, which have killed so many citizens, including members of law enforcement, addressing ghost guns in a material, substantive way. Again, these policies are popular. It's important for the House to take that step. I am hopeful that perhaps those who are negotiating a potential deal in the Senate will find some of what we do next week on the floor instructive. And by the way, Jake, I think we will get some Republican votes. We didn't, unfortunately, last night in the Judiciary Committee, but I think we will get a few colleagues from the other side of the aisle to ultimately do the right thing and step forward and vote for this bill when it hits the floor next week.
So after the disaster at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018, Florida's Republican governor, Rick Scott, and the Republican-led legislature did a whole bunch of things, including banning weapons sales of semi-automatic rifles to people younger than 21. They raised it from 18 to 21. They imposed a 3-day waiting period. They created a red flag law. They did a whole bunch of other things to make school grounds safer. Why not just take that legislation, copy it, and offer it up for a vote in the House and Senate? I mean, it's the law in Donald Trump's home state. It was signed by the Republican governor, who's now a senator in charge of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Why not just do that?
That's a great question, Jake. I certainly would support that. I think the legislation that we passed out of the committee last night largely emulates many of the provisions you just mentioned. Of course, we're going to consider red flag laws separately next week, and I imagine those will also attract some bipartisan support in the House. I'm not part of the negotiating group in the United States Senate. I am hoping against hope that they are successful, and I would certainly think that the Florida template that you just referenced, which garnered bipartisan support in that state, would be a good place to start. One of the most frustrating parts of this, Jake, for me personally, and I suspect for so many people across the country, is the inability for so many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as I said, to do the right thing and to recognize that these policies can, in fact, save lives, and they're not partisan. And that's deeply frustrating.
Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse of Colorado, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Have a good weekend.